tales for dark nights.
The following performance is a second-round entry in the 2016 Evil Idol competition, and you, the listener, get to help decide who wins. Like what you hear? Click the thumbs up. Don't care for it? Click the thumbs down. Good luck to all of our contestants.
The Girl That Follows, Part 1. Written and performed by J. Manzo for Chilling Tales for Dark Nights and the Evil Idol competition.
There are many different kinds of mysteries in this world. Some can be explained away using logic, while others remain unsolved and unexplained. The ones that violate the laws of nature that we hold dear, rely on, and live by every day are the ones that make it to the levels of urban legends and ghost stories. This is my story, the story of the girl that follows. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Connor. I'm 26 years old and live in Central California, though the beginning of this particular story starts off in Pennsylvania, back when my parents were still alive. Or maybe before that, when my parents immigrated here from Ireland, when I was but a wee lad of 9 years. But I digress. I suppose the obvious part of this story starts back in 2001, when I was in my freshman year in high school. I used to walk to school and hardly ever socialised with anyone there. Needless to say, I was a loner and didn't really have any friends. On this particular walk to school, though, there was something different. It was a cloudy day, with a cold chill in the air. The first winter snow was on its way, and Mother Nature was making it clear that it was going to be a cold one. It wasn't strange to see other kids walking the same route to school. However, as it was a particularly cold morning, I assume most kids prodded their parents and vehicularly capable friends enough to get a ride. I, on the other hand, was blessed with no friends to speak of, and a singular vehicular family with crack-of-the-morning unemployed father. So, I was stuck walking, and the cold grey morning was all mine to enjoy. Or at least, it was, until I heard a faint laughing in the distance. It didn't initially get my attention. No one ever talks to me in school because I was the weird immigrant kid with a funny accent. So, it wouldn't be any different out here during the walk to school. There was a tall walled-off property on the way to school, and it was always easier to walk alongside the wall, so without even thinking about it, I was already halfway past it when someone whispered, "Hey." I stopped and looked around, but there was no one there. It was strange, the way the voice seemed to be right next to my ear. The laughter cut the silence again, and this time my gaze turned up to see a pair of pale legs hanging off from the edge of the wall, almost 15 feet above me. As a 14-year-old lad, the first thing that crossed my mind was how nice they looked. But then I wondered how the hell this girl could bear this cold weather, wearing what appeared to be a dark green schoolgirl skirt. Her face was out of my perspective because I was looking straight up at her. She wore black short-heeled shoes and white calf-length socks. I could see that her legs were only partially covered by the green skirt. In my confusion and excitement, I barely managed to sputter a greeting. Hello there." In response, she only kicked her legs playfully and gripped the edge of the wall with her well-manicured fingers. Her nails were polished a deep dark red. That short, ominous and teasing giggle reached my ears again. Without really thinking about it, I was already walking away from the wall and into the street in order to get a look at this girl's face. Halfway into the middle of the street, a tree branch was still obscuring the girl's face, so I kept stepping backwards until my efforts were finally rewarded with the strangest yellow, yet most beautiful pair of eyes I'd ever seen, complemented only by her equally light, long crimson hair that draped down past her hips. She wore a simple white long-sleeve button-up blouse, with a simple red scarf tied around her waist as a sort of sash or belt. She was absolutely gorgeous, and yet the smile she gave me drove a spike of fear and panic straight into my chest. Her eyes held my gaze, and I found myself utterly entranced with her beauty. I could not look away, and I honestly didn't wish to. She had a beautiful shapely body, and amazing soft pale skin that appeared to almost glow in the grey morning light. Her pale pink lips were perfectly curved into an almost malicious smile. My heart was beating like a hammer on an anvil, and try as I might, I couldn't think of anything to say to her. Her eyes shifted to the left of me, and somehow I tore my gaze away from hers, in time to see a speeding truck barreling down the street. My body seemed to turn to stone at that very second, because I just could not move it to my will. But finally, at the last possible moment, I managed to rip myself off the road and landed straight in the ditch. The truck slammed on its brakes and skidded over the spot I was standing only a fraction of a moment ago. My heart was racing, and I barely registered the sound of the driver's side window rolling down and the driver mouthing off a curse before speeding off. After taking another few moments to get my bearings and to get my head back on straight, I looked back at the wall, only to see that the young lass was gone. The second thing I noticed was how much colder the morning had gotten, as well as the amount of snow that had accumulated on my head and shoulders. The ground was also coated in a good layer of soft snow, and flakes were falling at a good even pace. When had it started snowing? No wonder the truck had such a hard time stopping. A quick glance at my watch showed me that it was already 10:22 in the morning. That can't be right. Classes start at 8, and I was more than halfway to my school. I reasoned that my watch must have accidentally changed time when I slammed onto the ground to avoid getting hit. This, however, was unfortunately not the case. When I reached my school, my homeroom teacher looked at me with a quizzical stare, and I realised that I didn't recognise anyone in the classroom. After a very confusing and awkward exchange between myself and Mrs. Kettlewell, I made my way to the right class. Somehow, during the brief encounter between myself and the beautiful girl at the wall, I had lost over 2 hours of time, and must have stood in the same spot long enough to let snow cover my head and shoulders. The rest of the day was kind of a blur, and my afternoon was hell as I attempted to explain to my parents why the school was calling them regarding me skipping classes. The deep feeling of lust and fear that I felt when I first met the girl stayed with me for the rest of the night, and I found myself daydreaming about her to the point where homework was impossible. My attention must have really been off, because during the coming days I'd constantly find my personal effects misplaced around my room, and I'd have no memory of moving them. For the next few nights, sleep was next to impossible. Dreams plagued my mind, where the girl's giggle and her whisper would ring loudly in my ears. Every night I'd wake up thinking that she was standing by my bed, whispering, "Hey, Connor," followed by that same giggle. I'd wake up from both lustful dreams of her perfect skin and shapely body to fearful dreams of her agonizingly ominous eyes and smile piercing straight into me. She was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, but I wanted her. I needed to see her again. This wish would come true a few weeks later, and I lived to regret it. Or perhaps she's allowing me to live to regret it. On one particular Saturday morning, after a particularly embarrassing and extremely lustful dream with a girl, who by around this time I affectionately dubbed Alexis, I got out of bed and rushed to the bathroom in order to hide the massive morning erection from my parents. Lately my grades had been slipping, due to me falling asleep in class, no thanks to the newly nightly disturbances of my terrifying dream girl. I didn't need any more disapproving lectures or awkward encounters with my parents. The silent ninja vault through the hallway proved successful, and after quickly adjusting the circus tent south of my navel, I darted around the corner and into the lavatory. I clicked on the lights and locked the door in a well-practiced and fluid motion. But when I turned around, I noticed that the shower was on, the mirrors were fogged up, and someone was humming a very seductive tune behind the shower curtain. I'd heard that voice enough times in my dreams, and in the middle of the night, to know exactly who was bathing in my shower. But this couldn't be happening. None of it made any sense. The lights were off when I came in, and no one lived in this house except for me and my parents. On the shelf just outside the shower were a set of clothes neatly folded, a dark green skirt, a white long-sleeved blouse with red silk scarf, and black lacy underwear and bra. I took a step backwards in surprise and nearly tripped on a pair of black short-heeled shoes and neatly folded white socks. This girl hadn't made a second appearance on the wall for over 5 weeks. I know, because every morning I'd race over to the wall and check if she was there again. But now, here she was, only a mere few feet away, and most certainly nude in my shower, humming away. She had to know I was there as well. I turned the light on when I came in, so she had to have noticed. My heart was racing anew, and I felt my face flush with embarrassment. Despite the fogged-up mirrors and the running shower, the bathroom was oddly very cold. It didn't matter. Alexis was here. I swallowed my fear and embarrassment before finally building up the courage to speak. Hello? Is someone there? I felt my heart drop and my manhood throb the moment that she stopped humming and replied,
"Well, good morning, handsome. I see you're excited to see me."
My face flushed with embarrassment again at the realization that she could somehow see my very visible manhood through the shower curtain. Before I could say anything else, she spoke again.
Are you just going to stand there all day? Or are you going to come in here and help me wash my hair?
What little I remember next felt like a dream, but I recall quickly undressing and reaching for the shower curtain. There was a distant scream from somewhere in the house, but it seemed so far away and unimportant, as my eyes had locked themselves on the beautiful, shapely, pale figure of Alexis. I remember that she faced away from me, with her long red hair trailing down the small of her back, and I think I reached over to touch her, but must have lost consciousness, because the next memory I had was waking up in the hospital with a splitting headache. A doctor was talking to a nurse just off to me right, and I realised that my arms and legs were strapped down, and there was a metallic taste in my mouth. My throat was dry and sore, so it hurt when I finally managed to speak. "What's happening? Where am I?" The nurse and doctor almost jumped out of their skin to the sound of my weak voice. They had quickly turned and stared down at me as if I was some sort of abomination. The doctor quickly looked at the nurse and said in a serious tone,
"Call over the detective."
"Right away, Dr. Brown," she responded. He stayed in the room and clutched his clipboard so hard it looked as if it would break in half at any moment. A minute later, a tall man in a brown jacket and striped tie walked in with the nurse trailing behind. The doctor looked at him and said,
"He just woke up. Please dial the call button if there's any trouble."
The detective didn't look at him, but instead squared his stern gaze on me and said, "I don't feel that'll be necessary. Thank you, doctor." With that said, the doctor and nurse both closed the door behind them as they left the room. The detective took a step forward, then grabbed one of the plastic chairs to his left and turned it around to sit with his elbows resting on the chair's backrest. A small black recorder rested in the palm of his hand, and he pressed the record button just before introducing himself.
"Good afternoon, Connor. My name is Detective Alan Ashcroft with the Allentown Police Department. You can call me Ash if you'd like, and you're under no obligation to answer any of my questions if you don't feel like it. You're quite the talk of the hospital right now. Do you know why you're here, son?"
After a grueling hour of questions, I learned that my house had been burnt down, and the charred remains of my parents were found at their throats cut. I, on the other hand, had been found unconscious in the shower, still wearing my shorts and shirt, with the cold water on. There was speculation regarding the bump on the back of my head. Perhaps I had been attacked, perhaps I had slipped in the shower, or perhaps the wound was self-inflicted, as Detective Ash seemed to imply. With every word spoken, I felt an undertone of suspicion that I had some involvement with the deaths of my parents, and there was doubt into whether or not I was a victim as well. The facts were that both my father and mother were murdered that morning, then set ablaze before they could succumb to their wounds. Well, all I got was a bump to the head. I was in tears by the end of his questions, and honestly, I had all but forgotten about the restraints that held me down until Ash asked me his final question.
"I wanted to save this question for last, just to see if you'd say anything about it in your statement. Who's Alexis, and why is she so important to you?"
I remained silent and felt my face redden. I had purposely left Alexis out from many parts of my story, because at this point I had figured she had just been a figment of my imagination, something created due to the smoke inhalation and bump to the head.
"The firefighters had to hold you back from trying to run back into the burning building, and then the EMTs had to sedate you because you kept fighting them, all the while screaming for Alexis. One of the other docs tell me you managed to break a nurse's wrist and rip off an orderly's ear during the struggle to check you up. Doc Brown had to send 3 other nurses to the ER when you bit down on their hands and even managed to sever one of the nurse's fingers, hence the restraints you're in right now."
At the end of his sentence, I turned my head and threw up, just inches from his brown leather shoes. He didn't react, but instead held that same stern look in his eyes before casually reaching over and pressing the call button.
Thanks for listening. If you haven't already, don't forget to cast your vote for this contestant via a thumbs up or thumbs down vote. By doing so, you'll help us determine who will become the next permanent member of our voice acting team. At the close of voting on August 15th, based on your votes, the top 25 contestants will advance to the third round, which begins September 1st, based entirely on your votes. Thank you for voting and for helping to spread the word. You're listening to Chilling Tales for Dark Nights. I'm Steve Taylor, host of Chilling Tales, the podcast, encouraging you to turn off the lights and turn on the dark.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.